All right. Hello, hello. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Bonnie. This is Angular Nation, and we have a very exciting guest tonight. We have my dear friend, Aristeidis Bampakos, who wrote the book on Angular, literally wrote several award-winning books on Angular. I knew him before he was famous. He's really a very dear expert in our community. We love this guy. Let's not get all mushy. How are you
Hello,
doing,
Bonnie. I'm
Ari?
very fine. I'm very happy to be as a speaker in an expert event here in Angular Nation because usually I watch some of the cool events that Angular Nation organizes. I would like to congratulate you and all your team for making the Angular Nation such a welcoming community and very organized with awesome events. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I really love the vibe and the community and the way people treat each other, and just people are so supportive here and I love it. And there are a lot of really amazing people that I've met in Angular Nation that are just super friendly, and it's just, it's just a supportive thing and I love it. I love to see it. It's exactly what I was hoping for. And I am very happy to have you as one of our beloved experts. And really, I'm really happy to see, if I could just say, that your books are selling very well.
Yeah, the second one, which is the most recent, the Angular projects, has won 3 awards from the Book Authority. It has been named Best JavaScript Books of All Time, Best Web Development Book to read for someone to read for 2022, and Best Book for Beginners in Mobile Development. So I think it goes pretty well, right? Right now,
Right?
I'm in the process of writing my third book, which it will be a refresh, an update of the first one, which is the Learning Angular book, which is mostly for beginners. And I think that you have a copy and you are searching for it right now. That's right, yeah.
That's the book.
Recently, actually, this book will be published as an expert side book. So it will have the book will have some benefits, will have some marketing campaigns from the publication company, and it will be updated for Angular 15, maybe.
Wow.
Who knows?
So I have been bugging you for a while, and I know you're busy, but I've been bugging you because I wanted you to come here to teach us something from your book.
That's right, yeah. And I thought that the best example from the Angular Projects book, and it is a topic that most people do not, they don't know it very well because it is not very widely known. And the Angular documentation, it's not so in depth on this topic. I mean, it can be improved in this direction. So the topic that I will discuss today is how to create your own Angular CLI schematic for you and your team. Because, okay, we know the Angular CLI, right? You write ng generate service and the name of the service, and boom, you have an Angular service. But what if you want some more on this service? For example, we all use HTTP or the router. And sometimes we need to go and inject the HTTP client again and again and again inside the Angular services. So I thought to myself, why should I should make an Angular CLI schematic for that? So every time I type ng generate service and the name, I will have also HTTP client injected inside the service. So I will not need to go and open the service, inject the HTTP client, and put the HTTP methods.
Show us.
Okay. First of all, I would like to say that the Angular schematics is heavily deep. It's very deep inside the Angular CLI. So when we, as I told before, when we run a command in the Angular CLI, we're actually executing a schematic or a builder. But let's leave builders for another talk. So I plan to put you some links first, so that you can go and check out afterwards what are schematics and what are some examples of these generation schematics. Generally, the Angular CLI contains 3 types of schematics. The first is the generation schematics that are invoked when we type ng generate service, component, module, etc. The second one is the ng add schematic that we use when we want to install an Angular library into our project. And the third one is the update schematic, which I think most of us use often, which is used when we want to update a library into the latest version or Angular into the latest version, because the ng update is the update schematic for the Angular framework. So I will put some links in the chat that showcase some generation and add schematics that I have collected for you today. So the first one will be the official guide for schematics in the Angular documentation, right? And then there is some useful schematics in the library that I have created, which is called NGX Electronify. And then
I remember
Angular.
when we started that we had that started a conversation when we convinced you to write that library.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you were one of the persons that convinced me actually to write this library. And recently, if you check out my posts, I added some additional functionality to integrate Electron APIs inside Angular projects, but that's a lot of discussion for another time. Also, the Angular CLI and the Angular material have very useful schematics that someone can go and take. You can go and check out and copy paste the code and create your own schematic later. So this one is for the Angular CLI, and the next one is for the Angular material. So when I was experimenting with Angular schematics, I went to these links, most of these, and I took some ideas and check out what they have done. So, as you have already said, the schematics, the talk that I will do today is part of my book, which is called Angular Project Second Edition. And today, I will give you a promotional code, a discount code, that you can get the book either in the print version or in an ebook with a 25% discount. So the discount code is this one. And you can go to this link and get the book.
What about people who are watching later on the recording? Is this only for the people in the call, or do you want us to edit this out, or the people watching the recording can also use the discount code?
Oh, they can also get, because the discount is valid from today, from yesterday, 28th of July, until 12th of August.
Okay, so if you watch this before August 12th, then look in the description and we'll put the discount code in the description of the video.
Mm-hmm. Also, the code that I will show you today is also on GitHub. There is a GitHub repository that accompanies the book. I'm putting a link that points to the specific chapter that talks about the Angular schematics, so that you can follow along. For example, today I will do mostly coding. I don't have any presentation. I will do mostly coding, and I will do it just like I am the reader, right? So I'm reading my book, and I am experimenting by creating my own Angular schematics. Okay, so some things about schematics also. You can create a new schematic from scratch, or you can extend an existing one. Today, we will show how to extend a service schematic. For example, when you run ng-generate service and the name, our own schematic will be executed, not the one from the Angular CLI. And also, schematics can be standalone. For example, you create some schematics for your own team, so that to avoid a lot of boilerplate code and automate things. Or if you have an existing Angular library, you can create schematics for this library, for example, for users to install it. And you can create your ng-add schematic to install the library, or your ng-update schematic to update your library. So now the fun part, coding. Let me share my screen.
We want to see it in action.
Okay, let me zoom it a bit for you. I think it's okay now.
Yep.
Okay.
You might try making it a little bit bigger if you can.
I can. We will not use this terminal a lot. We will mostly use the integrated terminal from Visual Studio Code. But to get started, we need this terminal. So to start creating your own schematics, you need the Schematics CLI, and you can install it globally into your system using the npm client. So we can type npm install. We want it globally, so we pass the -G option because we want to create schematics in other Angular projects also. And then the name of the package, which is part of the Angular dev kit library, and it is in the Schematics CLI namespace. So this will install the latest version of the Schematics CLI inside into my system. Okay, after it has finished, we can start using it, and we can invoke it using the command schematics, and then we pass an option blank because we want to create a blank project for our schematic, and then the name of our project. Since we will create a service, an Angular service that will auto-inject the HTTP client for us, we will name it HTTP CRUD. And also, this service, this schematic, will also add one method for each CRUD operation. For example, one for get data, one for post, one for put, and one for delete. Let me name it, because I have already the HTTP CRUD. Let me say it's CR. Okay, now the schematic CLI will scaffold my project, and it will configure it so that I can start installing it. So I can start using it. So if we go to the folder that was created from the schematic CLI and open it using Visual Studio Code, let me switch my share to Visual Studio Code now. Okay. So this is the project that the schematic CLI has created for me. Let's see some files in this structure. For example, if we go to source, you can see that it has created a folder http-cr, which is the name of the project. So when you create a new Angular schematics project, you get a blank project, and inside that, it creates you one schematic that you can get started. So here we have the http-cr folder because this is the name of the parent project. And then we have the collection.json file. Now, this file is very important because in a schematic CLI project, you can have a collection of different schematics. For example, in this project, we have only one schematic, the http-scr schematic. And inside the collection.json, we can define, as we create new schematics, it will add it on the collection.json file. For example, here we have the http-cr that has a description, which is the description of the schematic. And we should change this to generate an HTTP CRUD service. And then we have a factory. Now the factory points to a path which is http-cr/index. If I open the folder here, you can see that I have two TS files. The spec, which is the unit test of the index.ts, which we will not speak about this today. And then we have the index.ts. Inside the index.ts, the factoring method says that go to the index.ts and try to find something which is called HTTP-CR. If I open the index.ts, you will see that the HTTP-CR keyword is actually a factory function. So this index.ts file is the main entry point of our schematic. So when we type ng generate blah blah blah, this function will be called, and it will do its magic that we will see later. So in this index.ts, you can see that it defines it returns actually a function that has two parameters. The first parameter is called a tree because all schematics operate on a virtual tree of our file system. So when you run ng generate service blah 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 blah, this will not make any changes until it has finished. So it creates a virtual file system. It does all the operations that are defined inside this function, and then it actually commits it to the real file system. So this tree object represents our file system. And the context, the second parameter, it's the actual context that our schematic operates. And we call it a schematic context. So let's go back to the collection.json. Sorry, let's remain to the index.ts. You can see here that the function HTTP-CR takes also a parameter which is called options. These options are the parameters that we pass in our schematic. For example, when you want to generate a service, you run ng generate service and then the name. This name is the parameter. It is part of this options object. By default, the Schematics CLI will type the options property as any because it doesn't know what options we may want to support. Be careful that even if you want to extend an existing schematic, you need to define the type of this options property. So we will go in this folder and we will create a file which is called schema.ts. And this schema, it will export an interface that will contain the options that we want to support in our schematic. So when we want to create a service, we need a name required and maybe a path, which is maybe optional. So we want a name, which is string, and a path, which is optional. Okay, now this schema.ts needs also a JSON file to accompany it. So we also create another file, which is called schema.json. And in this file, we will put, let me find it from my source code. Where is it? It's here. Okay. So this is the schema.json that I took from the GitHub repository. It has an ID. It has also a title. And in the properties object, we define the two options that we want to support. So when we define the properties of the schema, we also need to define them in the schema.json. So we have the name property with a description, which defines the name of the service, and it is a string type. And also we have the path, which is the path that will create the service inside. And we also say here that the name will be required when we run the schematic. Now, this schema.json, we also need to go here in the collection.json and define it. So we're actually saying that our schematic will have this description, this factory, and this schema. Okay, so we're ready to start writing the code. Okay, I want to create a schematic for an Angular service. What should I do first so that I don't do any mistake? okay, I will create a real service, right? So I have another Angular project that you can see it right now, where I have created an Angular service. Let me open it for you inside here. I think I can do it. No. Here it is. Okay, this is the service that I have created in another project. It will help me it will help me scaffold my schematic. So the schematic, the file that I will create now is, let's say, a template for this class, for this file. Okay, so I take this one, I copy all the service, and I go to the HTTPCR folder, and I create a very, very special file with a very, very special file name. Now, the file name, please pay attention. It is called underscore name, and this name is the name of the service that will pass actually at Arise. Arise is a special function that converts whatever you pass into it into dust format. So if you pass my service title case, it will convert it to my service, lowercase with a dash between the my and the service. So dash arise underscore, and then we write the dot service, dot ts, and at the end we put the name template. Okay, so here we're actually creating the template for our service that we will generate eventually. I paste my service code here. Of course, it doesn't understand anything because this is not a valid TypeScript file. Sorry, let me also explain some things about this service because I was in a hurry. Okay, I have created an API URL property on the top of my service because I want my consumers, my users, to actually add the API URL that they are going to use for their service. I have injected the HTTP client, and then I have created one method for its CRUD operation. And inside that method, I'm actually calling the get, the post, the CRUD operations that I want to support. And I pass the API URL in all of these methods, and also for the post method and the put, I also pass an obj property, which I have typed it as any because I don't know the user of my schematic what type is going to use. So I put it as any, and they are responsible for creating the correct type. Okay, so I have a service, I have a URL for my service, I have injected the HTTP client, and then I have created one method for its CRUD operation. Of course, you can do it, you can enrich it more, you can put more data if you want, you can, for example, you can put specific types if you want, or add more methods. So after I copy this code, as I did before, I paste it inside this template. And I said that it doesn't understand what this service is because this is not a valid TypeScript file. After I paste it, I need to make a small change, and then my template will be ready. You see here that says my service. Okay, the suffix service is added from the Angular CLI. For example, when you generate a service, you say customer service, product service, order service. But this prefix, the my service, it's not known beforehand. So this must be dynamic. And here we will put a specific placeholder. Let me find it. Which is this one.
Aris, Are you now copy pasting from your own book?
Yeah.
Good.
If I was a reader of my book, I would do this. So here we are actually saying to the schematic CLI that I want to use the classify method, and we pass the name as a parameter. Now, this notation is a specific notation for the schematic CLI, and the classify method actually, whatever name you pass, it converts it into a title case. For example, if the name of your service is customers, it will convert it into a customers with capital C. If it's products, with a capital products. And so goes on. So after I have created my template, I then need to modify my index.ts file to add the code so that when someone runs the schematic, it converts the template that we saw before in an actual Angular service. So I will take the index.ts, the code from the GitHub project, and I will explain it to you. Okay. So first, before we do anything further, we need to rename this to _tree because we are not going to use the tree property. And if we don't do this, the TypeScript compiler will complain because we don't use it anywhere. So let me apply the imports. Okay. I think I forgot something. I will add it later. So here we have many methods and properties that we use. Let's see each one by detail. Okay. First, we create a template source property that calls the apply method. Now, the apply method takes two parameters. The first one is the location of our template file, which is the /files folder. The second parameter is another function which is called apply templates. Now, what does this method do? First, it takes the options of our service. It takes the classify and the daserize methods that our schematic needs, and we defined it inside template, and puts it all together inside the template. So it works like the dependency injection mechanism. We are actually inject the options property from the Angular CLI schematic, the classify method, and the daserize method into the template file that we saw earlier. And it starts to make the substitutions. After we call the apply method and we create our template source variable, the template will be converted into an Angular service, an ordinary Angular service file, right? So then we need to move it in the specified locations that the developer has added. If there is a path property, it will move the service into the specified path. Otherwise, it will put it inside the normal source/app folder that our Angular application exists. So how do we use this template source variable? Because we haven't used it yet, we just defined it. Let me import these things. Okay, then we call the chain method. Okay. All these methods that I show you now are actually part of the Angular dev kit schematic. So you can see this very, very long import statement that has all the things that you need. So in the chain method, we pass two properties. The first one is that we call an external schematic. Why? Because our schematic is an Angular service schematic. So we want the Angular CLI to make its work, the standard work that the Angular CLI does with services. And then we want to merge our template with the service that Angular CLI creates. So these two properties inside the chain method do this. The first one is calling the service schematics of the Angular CLI, and the second one merges the result of the service with our template that we defined earlier. And finally, it will create the Angular service. I know that there is a lot to learn in this 12 lines, right? If you go to the link that I show you, that I added to the comments, in the comments, about the schematics CLI guide from the official Angular documentation, it explains each of these methods in more detail. So now that we have our index.ts file ready, we can build our schematic and see it on action. So I will use the integrated terminal. And I will run the build command. Okay, it was pretty fast because we have only one file. You can see here that I have defined my types and configuration so that the build, the actual transpilation, happens inside my project. You can configure the path by yourself if you want inside the tsconfig.json file. So after I build my library, I can link it, npm link, using the npm link command, which is like installing it from the npm. Okay, I linked it in the command, and I will now change to I will load my Angular project to see it in action. Where is it? Here it is. Okay, this is an Angular project that I have created using the latest Angular CLI 14.1 version. And now I can link the library, to the schematics library that I have created, which it was called HTTP CRUD. Okay, and then I can start using my schematic. I can invoke the Angular CLI using the generate command. And here I will not pass the standard service that we all know from the Angular CLI. I will pass the name of my schematic, which is called http-cr http-cr. The first part is the name of the schematics library, because if you remember, we said that a schematics project can have many schematics. So this one is the project, is the library. And the second part is the actual schematic that I want to invoke from that project. So maybe you had a service, an Angular service schematic, an Angular component schematic. So after the colon, you put the specific schematic command that you want to execute. And then you pass the name, which is the name of the service, for example, customers. Now this dash name is part of our schema that we defined with the name and the path. What am I doing wrong right now? Oh, sorry, CR. Okay, so my schematic created two files inside the source app folder, the customers.service.ts and the customer.service.spec.ts, which is a unit test file. If I open the customer service, doesn't have anything. Why is that? Let's see. It should. It should have it. Let me see. Where is it?
If it doesn't work, you should try tweeting at the author of the book because he might have some helpful advice. Or it's this book you're following, man. I don't know.
I have already created, so no worries.
We believe in you, Ari.
I think I'm too relaxed with my vacations.
You are on vacation.
Yeah, no, I don't. I don't want to be yet. Okay, I think it's here. Okay, here it is. Let's see why it didn't work. Okay, the index.ts looks okay. And this one looks also okay. What am I doing wrong? Let me see. Name. Let me make another build.
Is it to do with the files path, Ari, maybe?
The file path here, you mean? Oh, yes. Who said it? Tom.
Good job, Tom.
Tom.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're doing the next talk, Tom.
Oh dear. Okay.
I'm just kidding.
This file should be inside the files folder. So, yeah. Let's build it again. Now I think it works. I don't need to link it again. And if I open my project, and let's say, oh, okay. By accident, I ran the ng-generate command again, and it actually updated my file. Okay, I didn't know about that. Every day, you learn something new. So you can see that the customer service that we created, it contains all the methods, the CRUD methods that I have put in my template. It has injected my HTTP client. I have my API URL, and here you can see that the classify method has done its job. It has actually converted the name of the service into a title case. So now, if I was a developer in my team, the only thing that I need to do, if it was, of course, a mainstream application, because it always depends on what Angular application you're developing, then I only need to go and replace the types of the obj project, the obj property, or maybe pass some parameters here, HTTP params, I don't know. But with this approach, you already give your developers in your team the base to start creating services that use the HTTP client. And they don't need to start thinking and say, oh, how do I import the HTTP client? Or what packages do I need? Because sometimes you see the HTTP client, it's easy to forget it and say, okay, I don't remember the path of the HTTP client. Well, which is the location that I imported from. So in this approach, you're actually giving to your developers a very easy way to create services. Of course, you can do the same with your components, with your directives, with all the Angular artifacts. If you go to the GitHub repository of the book in chapter 10 that I added in the comments, you will see that I also show you how to create a template for the unit test file also, because the unit test file has many more boilerplate code that you need to add in order to pass the tests. For example, you need to import the HTTP client testing module, the browser module. So it will make it also very easy, so that when you generate your unit test, your service, you also get the unit test that accompanies the service, and it will be very easy to start writing also your unit tests. That's all I've got for today. I hope it wasn't a very big trouble for you to go through the code. I didn't give so much details because the Angular documentation guide does a good job for explaining each of these methods that we saw in the index.ts file. What I would like for you to take away from this talk is how easy to not be afraid of using the Angular CLI schematics, because there are many people, that are very they're afraid that it will be something very difficult. Or I don't know, it's Angular CLI. It has been created from Google. It will be difficult. There's no need to think like that. The Angular CLI has an API that we can use to that exposes actually an API that it is in our. We need to start using it, right?
I think it's the word schematic. Sounds complicated.
Yeah.
But it's a good, I know why they called it schematic, because it's a good description for what we're doing, but it's also, it just sounds like it's going to be confusing. But once you actually get in and start using it, it's not actually confusing. I
don't remember. I remember some conversations about how they should name it. I don't know. Do you remember something related, Sander?
Sorry, I was a little bit distracted.
Okay.
We're talking about naming the CLI schematic.
The schematic, actually. I think they were talking about how they should name it. Schematic, blueprint. Do you remember any conversations like this?
I don't really recall the conversations there. It's a long ago.
I would have called them CLI scripts, because it's like writing a script.
They are basically the schematics that wire up the Angular CLI. So that's...
Yeah. So it's a good name.
It's a good name, but...
It's just a little intimidating, that's all.
Well,
but not with you here, Ari.
I guess, I wish that it made it some more easy for you to go and check it out. The difficult thing with schematics is that you don't find so many examples to take inspiration from. And these links that I put in the comments at the beginning, they helped me so much to start writing the schematics chapter for my book.
Yeah. Also, the schematics are sometimes a little bit hard to work with because it's missing a couple of basic utility functions. They are going to address that. I don't know when.
Yeah.
Roadmap. Job
Yeah,
security
because
for the Angular team.
Yeah, because now, for example, if you want to read a file from your workspace, it's you need to do some custom work. I remember.
Yeah. Also, the update schematics are a little bit harder than the create schematics.
Yeah. I have never written an update
stuff.
schematic. Yeah.
Yeah, basically you need to create, for the update schematics, basically the CLI needs to use the Angular compiler to create an AST and then reverse engineer what code is there and then put it back in as it was. And that sounds simpler as it is because things like comments don't mean anything in an AST. And if you add something, it's so easy to mess something up. So, yeah.
How do you know, Sander?
Don't ask.
Okay, I have a couple questions. Oya has a question. Oya, you go first.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ari. This was a very great presentation. So I just have a question. So my question is more of between creating schematics and using VS Code snippets for maybe scaffolding that isn't really as complex. Which one do you think would be better? Using the schematics or just going with the snippets from VS Code, creating custom ones?
One use case that I think schematic is a better approach is if you want to combine schematics. For example, you want to make an automation that triggers a generate service schematic, and then I don't know, a generate component schematic. For example, maybe you want to provide to your developers in your team a way to create one module with one component, one service with HTTP, and I don't know, one component, one service. With schematics, you could create the various schematics, one for the module, one for the component, one for the service, and with one execution, the Angular CLI will create all of the packets for you.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess it does make more sense if it's a really complex thing, then go for schematics. But I was saying, if it's not that complex, do you think it's worth going for the schematics, or the snippets should just be the best?
The snippets feel more like copy pasting. It's like pasting for you, or like a shortcut, like a keyboard shortcut.
Yeah, and it's not, it's not guaranteed that the developer will use the snippets. But if you write the schematic, they will need to use the generate somehow,
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks.
Okay, is it my turn for questions?
Yeah.
I have 2 questions. Number 1, well, my first question was whether or not you could stay for questions, because we're almost at the top of the hour.
I can.
And I wanted to open it up and see if anybody else had questions, either about what you talked about today or just CLI schematics in general. And I know as an Angular GDE that you have a wealth of information, especially when it comes to translating things. But first, and Rob's already got his hand up. Good job. But I wanted to ask you briefly, because I know you can't teach us the whole book, but can you just give us an idea? Can you just give us the table of contents and tell us because this is one chapter from your book. Mm-hmm. How many chapters are there? And can you just give us examples of what the other projects are, just so we know in case we're thinking about it?
There are 10 chapters in total. And
what are they called?
What they're called? Chapter 1, chapter 2? No, I don't remember the titles, Bonnie.
Okay. But do you know what the chapters are?
Yeah, for example, you have a chapter that you create. I will tell you the most famous chapters, because I don't remember them all. One of the most famous is how to create a mobile photo geotagging application using capacitor.js from Ionic framework. So you're actually taking a picture with your mobile, and you see this picture in a virtual globe. So at some point, you will have created your own gallery on a virtual globe, and you can click on that globe and see the pictures that you have taken in various places in Earth.
Nice.
Another one
the code is there. Well, yeah, and the code is in GitHub,
yes.
and you're walking us through it and explaining it. Nice.
Yes. Another one is the famous CLI that Sander has developed, I think, a lot of code, right? So you're actually learning to create your own blog using CLI.
Nice.
Which I found it very interesting as an approach. Also, there is another chapter that teaches you how to use NX and NGRX in combination of two. And also I think there is also another chapter about Angular Material and Angular CDK.
Nice.
How to use them to create a project, actually to create various small components. How to create your own component UI library.
Beautiful. Speaking of Angular Material, people have been asking me to get the Angular Material team, and we have Christian, who is on. I don't know if he's still on the Angular Material team, but he has been. But now he's still on the Angular team, and I don't know if I'm allowed to tell you what he's working on, or if it's. I mean, obviously you're going to find out, but it's new stuff, and I'm going to let him tell you. But he's going to be here in a couple weeks, and he'll be answering questions about Material CLI, and also telling you what he's working on now for Angular Core, which is really cool. But I can't tell you. Also,
the Angular Material has very good examples with schematics, because they have they have some schematics that, for example, if you want to create a dashboard-like application, they have a schematic that generates all these components that you need. Or if you want to create an application with a list with a sidebar on your left and a main content on the right, they have also a schematic for that. So, you can get some inspiration from them also.
Absolutely. Okay, so we have a few more minutes. Rob had his hand up. Rob, did you have a question, or was your question answered?
No, my question was answered, but I wanted for him to start all over again because I came in late.
I can't believe you have anything else to do other than hang out with us all day, Rob. What are you doing with your life, man? A job is really, I think your priorities are screwed. Just because they pay you, you just give them priority. Crazy. It's good to see you, though.
Thank you.
And obviously, we recorded it, so I'll post it. No worries. It was awesome, and Ari's been teaching us cool stuff.
Bonnie, do you record it also, the part that Sander says that I copy my own code?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, no.
I was actually kind of impressed because you were just going through it so smoothly, and I was thinking, he must have, because you're just making it look so easy. And then I remembered you're literally following along the chapter in the book. And that's why you're like, okay, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this. So then anyone who's watching this can follow along in the chapter in the book, or do all of the other things as well in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Tom Eustace. Tom came to the rescue. It was looking pretty scary there for a minute, and Tom bailed us out. Thanks, Tom.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for the talk, Ari. It's great. I'm just wondering, when you're authoring schematics, is there, does a language service help you out, or is there extensions or anything that would help to prevent you from making mistakes?
I don't think so. Because the files, the template files that we saw, they're not recognized from the Angular language service. So it's very, as you said, it's very easy to make a mistake. For example, if you miss, for example, the percent character when you write the name of the service, or if you missed the folder like I did, then it is, you don't have any other way to. You just to debug it manually.
Mm-hmm. And can you run it with a dry run flag by default, so it doesn't apply any changes, or do you have to specify that yourself?
I don't know about the dry run.
That's a very good question.
Yeah.
It's a good question when the GDEs don't know the answer either. So
you could try it. Yeah, just
schematic?
try it live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Tom is on fire today.
Ari, you're still sharing your screen, so now we all want to know.
It will work.
Oh yeah, it works.
Okay.
Nice.
That was fun.
Okay, great.
Good job, Tim, for making us try it live. Again, thank you so much to AG Grid. We love you, AG Grid, and we would not be here without AG Grid. Thank you, Ari, for coming and giving us your time and showing us this awesome. And you guys know the tradition. Everybody please come off mute and help me thank our friend Ari.
Thank you, Ari.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great job.
Ari, you're the best teacher.